The morning sun broke over the Kennedy Space Center, casting long shadows across the launch pad. Dr. James Miller stood at the control room window, his eyes fixed on the sleek spacecraft below. Years of work had led to this moment. Final systems check complete. All green, called Elena Rodriguez from her station. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, confirming readings that no human had ever seen before. James nodded. Initiate pre-launch sequence. The room hummed with tension. Just 5 years ago, Earth had made first contact with the Galactic Assembly, a coalition of 27 alien species that governed this sector of the Milky Way. Humanity had been welcomed, with conditions. T-minus 10 minutes, announced the automated system. James took a deep breath. The Prometheus engine was his life's work, a propulsion system that bent the rules of physics in ways that even he didn't fully understand. In theory, it could take a ship across the galaxy in weeks instead of centuries. The door to the control room slid open. James expected to see General Wallace, who had been supporting their project from the beginning. Instead, 3 figures entered, 2 humans in government suits, and between them, an alien. The alien was tall and thin with grayish-blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the fluorescent lights. 4 eyes blinked independently on its face. This was Ambassador Krell of the Mantari, Earth's official liaison to the Assembly. "Stop all launch preparations immediately," ordered one of the suited humans. Elena looked up from her station. "What? On whose authority?" "By order of the Galactic Assembly Security Council," Krell said, his translator producing perfect English with an odd metallic undertone. Regulation 718B prohibits emerging civilizations from developing dimensional fold technology. James stepped forward. "This isn't dimensional folding. This is a completely new approach." "We've reviewed your equations, Dr. Miller," Krell replied. "Your Prometheus engine violates the restricted technologies list. All research must cease." The control room fell silent. The second government agent, a woman with a severe expression, handed James an official document. "All your research has been classified. Your team is hereby ordered to surrender all materials related to the project." James scanned the document. It bore the signatures of the United Earth Council and the Assembly Security Board. "This is ridiculous. We've broken no laws. Earth wasn't even part of the Assembly when we started this project. Membership terms are retroactive regarding prohibited technologies," Krell said. "It's for your own protection." Elena stood up from her station. "Protection from what exactly?" The alien's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Cosmic stability concerns." "That's not an answer," James said. "It's all you need to know," replied the female agent. "Shut it down, Dr. Miller." James looked at Elena, seeing the same frustration in her eyes that he felt. 3 years of work, billions in funding, and now they were being shut down without a proper explanation. "T-minus 5 minutes, announced the system. "I said shut it down," the agent demanded. James reached for the controls but hesitated. Something wasn't right. The Prometheus engine had been developed using basic physics principles. There was nothing mystical or dangerous about it. "Ambassador Krell," James said carefully, "can you explain these cosmic stability concerns?" The alien shifted uncomfortably. "Some technologies are restricted for the greater good. The Assembly has existed for 50,000 years. We have learned which paths lead to disaster." "By testing them yourselves?" Elena asked. "By observing others," Krell answered. "Species who rushed into technologies they weren't ready for." James crossed his arms. "So other species have developed similar technology. And where are they now?" Elena added. Krell's skin darkened slightly. What James had learned was a sign of discomfort in Mantari. "That information is classified." T-minus 3 minutes. The male agent moved toward the control panel. "We're stopping this launch. Now." James blocked his path. "This isn't just about the launch, is it? You're afraid of what we might discover out there." "Don't be absurd," the female agent snapped. The assembly has been nothing but helpful since first contact. Helpful? Elena laughed bitterly. They've shared agricultural techniques and basic medical knowledge, but they've denied every request for advanced propulsion, energy generation, or weapons technology. James studied Krell's reaction. The alien was becoming increasingly agitated. T-minus 2 minutes. The assembly determines what technology is appropriate based on civilization development metrics, Krell said. Earth simply hasn't reached the threshold for certain advancements. And who sets these thresholds? James asked. Let me guess, the founding members of the assembly. Krell didn't answer, which was answer enough. The female agent stepped forward. This is now a matter of national security. General Wallace has been informed and agrees with the shutdown. That was surprising. Wallace had been their biggest supporter. May I see confirmation of that? James asked. The agent hesitated just long enough for James to know she was lying. T-minus 1 minute. Enough. The male agent pulled out a device. This will disable your systems. Step aside. Elena quickly typed something on her keyboard, then stood up. It's too late. The launch sequence is locked. What have you done? Krell demanded, his translator unable to hide the panic in his voice. James smiled grimly. We're running the test as planned. If you want to stop us, you'll have to explain exactly why. You don't understand the consequences, Krell said. The Prometheus engine creates ripples in subspace that can be detected across vast distances. By whom? James pressed. T-minus 30 seconds. The agents looked at each other nervously. Krell stepped back toward the door. Stop this launch, Dr. Miller. For your own safety and that of your planet. Elena moved next to James. We've waited too long for answers. If the assembly won't tell us the truth, we'll find it ourselves. T-minus 15 seconds. This is your final warning, the female agent said, but her voice lacked conviction. James turned to the window, watching as steam began venting from the spacecraft below. Humanity didn't come this far by following arbitrary rules. We explore. We discover. We advance. T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The ground shook as the engines ignited. Even from the control room, they could feel the power of the Prometheus engine as it came to life. The spacecraft rose slowly at first, then faster, trailing brilliant blue light that no conventional rocket had ever produced. What have you done? Krell whispered. James watched as his creation climbed higher, breaking free of Earth's gravity with impossible speed. We've just changed everything, he replied. Elena's computer beeped. She glanced at the screen and then looked up at James, her eyes wide with excitement. The readings are beyond anything we predicted. It works even better than we thought. As the spacecraft vanished from view, James turned to Krell. Now, Ambassador, I think it's time you told us what the Assembly is really afraid of. 3 days after the unauthorized launch, James found himself sitting in a dimly lit underground room that officially didn't exist. The concrete walls were bare except for a map of the solar system and several screens displaying data from the Prometheus test flight. The air smelled of coffee and electronics. You've really done it this time, Miller, said General Wallace, pacing the length of the room. The old military man looked tired, with new lines on his weathered face. The Assembly representatives are demanding your arrest. For what? Testing our own technology in our own solar system. Elena asked. She sat beside James, dark circles under her eyes from 3 days without proper sleep. For violating Assembly Regulation 718B, Wallace replied, but there was no conviction in his voice. He stopped pacing and leaned against the table. Look, I've been ordered to shut down your entire department and hand over all your research. James crossed his arms. And will you? Wallace's mouth twitched into something almost like a smile. That's why we're meeting here instead of my office. This facility doesn't appear on any official records. Elena leaned forward. So you're helping us. Let's just say I have questions too. Wallace tapped a command into the nearest keyboard, and one of the screens changed to show a star map. This is what the assembly has shared with us about nearby habitable systems. The map showed a dozen highlighted stars within 50 light years. And this, Wallace continued, bringing up a second map, is what our own radio telescopes have detected. The new map showed over 40 potential systems. James studied both images. They're hiding worlds from us. Why? That's not all. Wallace entered another command. 6 months ago, we intercepted a transmission between two assembly ships. Our linguists only recently finished the translation. A conversation appeared on screen. Vessel 1. Human progress on propulsion technology exceeds projected models. Vessel 2. The Oversight Committee is concerned. Recommend increased monitoring. Vessel 1. Agreed. Their chaotic thinking produces unexpected technological leaps. Vessel 2. The Miller team is particularly concerning. Their approach mirrors the Zenth breakthrough. Vessel 1. We all remember what happened to the Zenth. Vessel 2. Precisely why humans must be guided carefully. James felt a chill. Who are the Zenth? We don't know, Wallace said. They're not among the species we've been introduced to. The door to the room slid open. A young lieutenant stepped inside. Sir, Captain Reed has arrived. Wallace nodded. Send him in. The man who entered wore a flight suit with faded patches. He moved with the confident grace of someone completely at home in his body. Dark hair was cut short above sharp eyes that missed nothing. Marcus Reed, he said, extending his hand to James. Former test pilot, current problem solver. James shook his hand. What kind of problems do you solve? The kind that come with breaking alien rules, Reed replied with a grin. General Wallace thinks you might need someone who can fly experimental craft without asking too many questions. Elena studied Reed. Why would you help us? You don't even know what we're doing. I know the assembly is hiding something, Reed said, his smile fading. 3 years ago, I was testing a new high-atmosphere craft. I detected a structure on the far side of the moon. Something huge that doesn't appear on any official maps. When I reported it, I was grounded and told it was a sensor malfunction. Wallace gestured for everyone to sit. We need to move quickly. The assembly has called an emergency session about Earth's technology violations. I expect stricter oversight will follow. We need answers before that happens, James said. Our test flight showed that the Prometheus engine works, but we still don't know what the assembly is hiding. The door opened again, but this time no one had knocked. Everyone turned, reaching for weapons that weren't there. The figure that stepped through wasn't human. Standing about 5 feet tall with gray-green skin and large, solid black eyes, it moved with strange grace. Its 6-fingered hands were raised in a gesture of peace. General, it said in a soft, melodic voice, your security needs improvement. Wallace stood, his face pale. How did you get in here? The same way I avoided your orbital sensors when I landed, the alien replied. Technology the assembly doesn't want you to have. James found his voice first. Who are you? My name is Thorne. Was a scientist among the Vril. The Vril aren't part of the assembly, Wallace said. No, Thorne agreed. We were once, but we chose to leave. Or more accurately, we were forced out when we refused to stop our research. The alien moved closer, studying the screens. I see you've begun to question their restrictions. Elena stood her ground as Thorne approached. Why are you here? Because your Prometheus engine created ripples in subspace that we detected. Thorne's large eyes blinked slowly. It got our attention, and the assembly's. I've come to warn you. About what? James asked. The assembly isn't what it claims to be. Thorne gestured at the star maps still displayed on the screen. They don't protect emerging civilizations. They control them. Reed leaned forward. Why? Fear, Thorne said simply. Fear of what humans and species like yours might become. James thought about Krell's reaction during the launch. The ambassador mentioned cosmic stability concerns. What did he mean? They use that phrase whenever they want to hide the truth, Thorne said with a sound that might have been a laugh. The assembly was founded by the 5 oldest spacefaring races. For 50,000 years, they've controlled which species join and which technologies they can develop. But why? Elena pressed. Because some species think differently. Some, like humans, have what they call chaotic thinking. You make unexpected connections. You develop technologies in ways they can't predict. Thorne touched one of the screens, bringing up data from the Prometheus test. Like this engine, you approached the problem from an angle no assembly scientist would consider. General Wallace frowned. You still haven't explained what happened to these chaotic thinking species. Thorne's expression was hard to read on his alien face. Some were like the Zenth, who developed technology similar to your Prometheus engine. When they refused to stop their research, their colony ships mysteriously failed. Their homeworld suffered a natural disaster that destroyed their civilization. The room fell silent as they absorbed this information. Are you saying the assembly would attack Earth? James finally asked. Not directly, Thorne replied. They prefer methods that appear natural or accidental. But they will not allow you to develop technology that threatens their control. Reed crossed his arms. So what do we do? Complete what you've started, Thorne said. Build a ship that can take you beyond their reach. The Prometheus engine is just the beginning. We'd need a secure facility, James said, thinking aloud. Somewhere they couldn't monitor. Helena turned to Wallace. What about the old research station in Antarctica? It was built to be shielded from all external signals. Wallace nodded slowly. It could work, but we'd need time. I can help with that, Thorne said. I can provide technology to mask your activities. James looked at each person in the room, ending with the alien who had risked everything to warn them. If what you're saying is true, we're not just building a ship. We're starting a rebellion. Thorne's large eyes seemed to shine with something like hope. Every revolution begins with a single act of defiance. You've already taken the first step. Reed grinned. When do we start? Now, James said. We've got a ship to build. Antarctica's endless night wrapped around the hidden facility like a protective cloak. 4 months had passed since their meeting with Thorne, and the old research station had been transformed. What once housed climate scientists now contained the most advanced shipyard on Earth. James stood before the gleaming hull of the Venture, their salvation disguised as a simple exploration vessel. From the outside, it resembled a conventional spacecraft. Inside, it held the secret that could change humanity's place in the galaxy. Final power coupling is complete. Elena called from inside the engine compartment. Her voice echoed through the open hatch. The Prometheus engine is ready for full integration. Captain Reed looked up from the navigation console he was calibrating. About time. Assembly patrols have doubled in the last week. Something's got them spooked. Us, James replied simply. They know we're up to something. They just don't know what or where. Thorne entered the main hangar, moving with the strange grace that still caught James off guard. The alien carried a device that resembled a silver sphere with intricate patterns etched across its surface. The masking field is weakening, Thorne announced without preamble. Assembly sensors will penetrate our defenses within 48 hours. General Wallace, who had been overseeing security, joined them. Can you strengthen it? Not without equipment I don't have, Thorne replied. We must accelerate our timeline. James ran a hand through his hair, which had grown too long during their months in isolation. The ship's ready for the engine, but we haven't run a full systems test. No time, Reed said. We'll have to test it in flight. Elena emerged from the engine compartment, wiping grease from her hands. Her face was lined with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with determination. The Prometheus engine is as ready as it's going to get. Then we launch tomorrow, James decided. Wallace shook his head. Too risky. The supply shuttle isn't due for 3 days. If we launch before then, we'll raise alarms. We're out of options, Thorne said, his large black eyes fixed on the general. The assembly isn't just searching for the technology anymore. They're searching for me. Why you specifically? Elena asked. Because I've done more than warn you, Thorne admitted. I shared Vril knowledge that the assembly has suppressed for centuries. James nodded slowly. Everything about the Prometheus engine had advanced rapidly after Thorne's arrival. What would have taken years had been accomplished in months. If they find Thorne here, they'll know exactly what we've been doing, Reed pointed out. Wallace checked his watch. The night crew arrives in 1 hour. That gives us until morning to prepare. Then we launch at dawn, James said. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of activity. The engine was mounted and connected to the ship's systems. Supplies were loaded. Final checks were conducted with the desperate efficiency of people who knew they might not get a second chance. At 5:30 a.m., with the Antarctic darkness still complete outside, the team gathered in the control room. The Venture sat ready in the launch bay below, its hull gleaming under the harsh lights. Launch sequence initiated, Elena announced, her fingers dancing across the control panel. All systems nominal. Opening bay doors, Reed added. He was already dressed in his flight suit, ready to pilot the ship into the unknown. Above them, the massive doors began to slide apart, revealing the star-filled Antarctic sky. The air in the hangar crystallized instantly as the warmth inside met the brutal cold of the polar night. James felt a moment of doubt. Were they really ready for this? The Prometheus engine worked in theory and in limited tests, but a full spaceflight was another matter entirely. Energy spike detected in orbit. Wallace called out, monitoring the security systems. Assembly ships are changing course. They've spotted us. How? Elena demanded. The masking field is still active. The doors, Thorne said grimly. Opening them created a gap in our defenses. James made a quick decision. We stick to the plan. Captain Reed, board the ship. Elena, you're with him. I'll finish the launch sequence from here. You're not coming? Elena asked, surprise evident in her voice. Someone needs to erase all evidence of what we built here, James replied. I'll follow on the supply shuttle. Wallace nodded in agreement. I'll stay too. We'll destroy everything they could use to track you. Reed checked his watch. We have maybe 20 minutes before assembly ships enter visual range. Go, James ordered. Now. Reed and Elena ran for the elevator that would take them to the launch bay. Thorne hesitated. Your place is on that ship, James told the alien. You've risked everything to help us. Don't throw away your chance to see it through. After a moment, Thorne nodded and followed the others. James turned to the controls, initiating the final launch sequence. On the monitors, he watched as Reed, Elena, and Thorne boarded the Venture. The ship's external lights came to life, illuminating the frost-covered launch bay. Assembly ships entering upper atmosphere, Wallace reported. 4 vessels, standard patrol configuration. James opened the communication channel. Captain Reed, you are clear for launch. Godspeed. Understood, Reed's voice replied. Beginning takeoff sequence. On the screens, the Venture's engines ignited, bathing the launch bay in blue light. The ship rose slowly at first, then with increasing speed as it cleared the bay doors and shot into the dark sky. They're away, James said, feeling a moment of triumph. Then the alarms began to sound. Multiple contacts, Wallace called out. Assembly ships on direct intercept course. James grabbed the microphone. Reed, you've got company. 4 ships moving to block your exit vector. I see them, Reed's voice came back, tense but controlled. Beginning evasive maneuvers. On the tracking screen, the Venture weaved between the approaching assembly vessels. They were small and fast, designed for atmospheric interception. They're not firing, Wallace noted. They want to force the ship down, not destroy it. "Captain Reed," James said, "activate the Prometheus engine. Now." "But we haven't tested it in atmosphere." Elena's voice broke in. "No choice," James replied. "Do it." On the screen, the Venture suddenly stopped its evasive pattern and shot straight upward at impossible speed. A brilliant blue light trailed behind it as the Prometheus engine engaged. The assembly ships attempted to follow, but within seconds, the Venture had vanished from normal detection range. "Did they make it?" Wallace asked. Before James could answer, the facility shook as something heavy landed outside. The security screen showed 3 assembly ships touching down near the main entrance. "Destroy everything," James ordered, already moving to the emergency controls. "Wipe the computers. Melt the prototypes." Wallace hit a series of buttons, initiating the facility's self-destruct sequence. "What about us?" James smiled grimly. "We'll buy them time." Outside, the facility doors began to open. Ambassador Krell stepped in, flanked by armed security forces from the assembly. "Dr. Miller," the alien said through his translator, "you have violated multiple assembly regulations. Surrender immediately." James straightened his back, standing tall as emergency lights flashed around them. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Ambassador." "Where is the ship you launched?" Krell demanded. James looked up at the open bay doors, where stars still shone in the Antarctic night. "Somewhere up there, beyond the reach of the Assembly's laws, the Venture carried humanity's future among the stars." "They're already gone," he said, "and you'll never catch them now." The Venture streaked through the void, trailing wisps of blue energy as the Prometheus engine pushed it to speeds no human vessel had ever achieved. Inside the ship, Captain Reed gripped the controls with white knuckles, his eyes fixed on the navigation display. "Engine stability at 93%. Elena reported from the engineering station. Her voice was calm despite the tension that filled the bridge. "We're moving at roughly 300 times the speed of conventional drives." Thorne stood by the main viewport, his alien eyes reflecting the strange distortion effects that warped the starfield around them. "We've broken free of assembly tracking range. Their fastest ships cannot match this velocity." Reed allowed himself a small smile. "Then we did it. We're free." "For now," Elena cautioned. "But where are we going? We can't just keep flying forever." Thorne moved to the navigation console. "Set course for these coordinates." His 6-fingered hand entered a sequence that brought up a star map different from any in Earth's databases. "What's there?" Reed asked. "Something the Assembly has hidden from Earth and many other worlds," Thorne replied. "The reason they restrict faster-than-light travel." Elena looked up from her station. "You knew about this all along. Why didn't you tell us?" "Because you needed to prove yourselves first," Thorne said simply. "Many species have tried to break free of assembly control. Few have succeeded." Reed adjusted their course according to Thorne's coordinates. The Prometheus engine hummed with power, carrying them deeper into unexplored space. "We should reach the location in approximately 7 hours," Reed announced. For the next several hours, they took turns resting and monitoring the ship's systems. The Prometheus engine performed beyond expectations, maintaining stable output even as they pushed it to its limits. Elena used the time to examine data streaming from the engine. "These readings are fascinating," she told Reed during his rest period. "The engine isn't just propelling us through space. It's somehow folding space-time around us in a controlled bubble." "Is that why the stars look stretched?" Reed asked, glancing at the viewport. "Partially," she replied. "But there's something else. The engine is creating harmonic waves in subspace, like ripples in a pond. And occasionally, I detect something responding to those ripples." Reed frowned. "What do you mean, responding?" "I'm not sure," Elena admitted. "It's as if something out there is resonating with our engine frequency." Before Reed could respond, Thorne entered the bridge. "We're approaching the coordinates. Reduce speed." Reed returned to the pilot's seat and eased back on the throttle. The Prometheus engine's hum decreased in pitch as the ship decelerated. The starfield outside gradually returned to normal as they dropped below superluminal velocity. "I don't see anything special," Elena said, scanning the surrounding space. "Just another star system." "Wait," Reed pointed at the scanner. "I'm picking up artificial structures ahead. Big ones." As they drew closer, the structures became visible through the main viewport. Massive rings floated in space, each one several kilometers in diameter. Their surfaces gleamed with a metallic sheen that seemed to shift colors as they watched. "What are they?" Elena whispered, awed by the scale. "Stargates," Thorne replied. "Built by the precursors 500,000 years ago. A network that spans the entire galaxy." Reed maneuvered the ship closer to one of the rings. "They're transportation devices. Instantaneous travel between any connected gates," Thorne confirmed. "No need for engines or long journeys. Step through one gate, emerge from another thousands of light years away." Elena's eyes widened with understanding. "That's why the assembly banned our technology. They control these gates." "Precisely," Thorne said. "The 5 founding species discovered the gate network early in their expansion. They claimed the gates, controlled access to them, and built their power on that monopoly." Reed studied the massive ring as they circled it. "But why not just share the technology? Why hide it?" "Power," Thorne answered simply. "By controlling who can travel where and how quickly, they control trade, colonization, and military response times. The entire assembly hierarchy is built on gate access privileges." Elena pointed to what appeared to be a control station floating near the nearest gate. "Is that an assembly outpost?" "Yes," Thorne replied. "Each gate has monitors who regulate traffic and collect transit fees." "Can they see us?" Reed asked, already adjusting course to remain behind the massive ring. "Not yet. The Prometheus engine's signature is unfamiliar to their sensors, but they will detect us eventually." Elena turned to Thorne. "You said these gates were built by precursors. What happened to them?" "Nobody knows," Thorne admitted. "They vanished long ago, leaving only their technology behind. The assembly found it, claimed it, and has spent 50,000 years pretending they created it." Reed frowned. "So all their advanced technology, reverse-engineered from precursor artifacts," Thorne confirmed. "The assembly species aren't inventors. They're caretakers who've convinced the galaxy they're gods." Elena moved to the engine monitoring station. "The Prometheus engine is showing unusual energy patterns. It seems to be interacting with the gate somehow." On the view screen, the nearest stargate began to glow, its inner ring spinning slowly. "What's happening?" Reed demanded. Thorne moved to Elena's station, his large eyes studying the readings. "Impossible. The engine frequency is activating the gate." "Is that bad?" Reed asked, already preparing evasive maneuvers. "It's unprecedented," Thorne replied. "The gates only respond to assembly control signals. No other technology has ever activated them." The gate's spinning accelerated, the glow intensifying until the center of the ring filled with a swirling blue light. Energy arced between the gate and the venture, creating a visible connection. "The engine and the gate are synchronizing," Elena reported, her fingers flying across the controls. "They're establishing a harmonic resonance." "Shut down the engine," Reed ordered. "I can't," Elena replied. "It's locked into some kind of feedback loop with the gate." The ship shuddered as energy continued to flow between it and the massive ring. Warning lights flashed across the control panels. "The assembly outpost has detected us," Thorne announced. "They're signaling for reinforcements." Reed struggled with the controls. "Can we break free?" "Wait," Thorne said suddenly. "Look at the gate." The swirling energy at the center of the ring had stabilized into what appeared to be a window showing a different region of space. Stars in unfamiliar patterns shone through the portal. "It's open," Thorne whispered. "You've activated a dormant gate, one the assembly doesn't control." Elena checked her readings. "Where does it lead?" Thorne studied the star patterns visible through the gate. After a moment, his alien features showed what might have been surprise. "If I'm not mistaken, Earth's solar system." "That's impossible," Reed argued. "Earth is thousands of light years from here. The gates don't care about physical distance," Thorne explained. "They connect based on harmonic resonance patterns established when they were built." Elena's eyes widened, and the Prometheus engine somehow matched Earth's resonance pattern. "Which suggests," Thorne began, "that Earth has a connection to the precursors," Elena finished. Before they could discuss further, the ship's proximity alarms blared. 3 assembly vessels had appeared, approaching rapidly from the direction of the control station. "They'll be in weapons range in 2 minutes," Reed reported. Thorne pointed at the active gate. "We have one option. Go through. Into an unknown destination." Reed asked skeptically. "Into Earth's solar system," Thorne corrected. "I'm certain of it." Elena looked at the approaching assembly ships, then at the swirling portal. "If the gate really does lead to Earth, we have proof of what the assembly has been hiding." Reed hesitated only a moment longer before setting course directly for the gate. "Hold on. This might get rough." The venture accelerated toward the massive ring. Behind them, the assembly ships opened fire, energy weapons flashing across the void. Several shots passed close by, but the venture's speed made it a difficult target. "Impact with gate portal in 5 seconds," Reed called out. "The engine is still synchronized with the gate," Elena reported. "Energy levels are stable." 4, 3, 2, 1. The venture plunged into the swirling blue energy at the center of the ring. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Reed felt as though his body had been turned inside out and then reassembled. Elena gasped beside him. Even Thorne seemed disoriented. Then suddenly, they were through. The ship emerged into open space on the other side. The view on the main screen adjusted, showing familiar stars. "Location?" Reed asked, his voice hoarse. Elena checked the navigation system, then looked up with wide eyes. "We're in Earth's solar system, just beyond the orbit of Mars." Thorne moved to the viewport, staring out at the distant blue dot that was Earth. "We just traveled thousands of light years in seconds, and opened a direct path back to Earth that bypasses all assembly control," Reed added. Elena turned to face them both, her expression serious. "We've just changed everything, haven't we?" "Yes," Thorne replied. "The assembly's greatest secret is now exposed, and humanity holds the key to unlocking the entire gate network." Reed set course for Earth, a grim smile on his face. Time to bring the truth home. The United Earth Council chamber buzzed with tension. Representatives from every nation sat in tiered seats that surrounded a central speaking platform. Above them, massive screens displayed images of the Stargate that the venture had discovered and activated. James Miller stood on the platform, his heart pounding. Beside him were Elena, Captain Reed, and Thorne. After their return through the Stargate, James had been released from assembly custody along with General Wallace. No official explanation had been given, but it was clear the assembly was scrambling to control the situation. "The evidence is irrefutable," James said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "The assembly has hidden the Stargate network from Earth and dozens of other civilizations, while claiming exclusive right to interstellar travel." "These are serious accusations," Dr. Miller said. Chairwoman Lynn, the head of the council. "Ambassador Krell has requested the right to respond." James nodded stiffly. "Of course." Ambassador Krell stepped onto the platform, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. James noticed the alien seemed less confident than during their previous encounters. "Esteemed council members," Krell began, his translator producing the familiar metallic voice. "The Assembly regrets that information about the Stargate network has been presented in such a incomplete manner." Helena leaned close to James. "Here come the excuses," she whispered. "The Stargates are indeed ancient technology," Krell continued. "They were discovered by Assembly founding members thousands of years ago. We have maintained and protected this network for the benefit of all civilizations." protected. Reed stepped forward without being recognized or monopolized. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Chairwoman Lynn raised her hand for silence. The network is delicate, Krell insisted. Access must be carefully controlled to prevent catastrophe. Imagine what would happen if hostile species could suddenly appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. Like the assembly ships that appeared over Earth after first contact, James asked pointedly. The ships that arrived through a stargate you never told us about. More murmurs, louder this time. Krell's skin darkened with agitation. The assembly has always acted in the best interests of all member worlds. Then explain this. James nodded to Alina, who activated a data projection. The chamber screens changed to show technical specifications of the Prometheus engine alongside data from the Stargate. Our engine didn't just happen to activate the gate, Alina explained. The frequency signatures match perfectly. The engine's core technology and the gate's operating system are based on identical principles. Impossible, Krell protested. Your species couldn't possibly understand gate technology. Thorne stepped forward. The chamber fell silent at the sight of the alien who had defied the assembly to help humanity. It's not about understanding, Thorne said, his melodic voice carrying easily. It's about resonance. Humans built their engine following their own scientific instincts and created something that resonates with precursor technology in ways the assembly never could. Which brings us to the most important question, James added. Why does human technology naturally align with precursor systems? Krell moved backward slightly. This is speculation without basis. Is it? General Wallace rose from his seat among the Earth delegates. When we returned through the gate, we found something interesting. Captain Reed, show them. Reed activated his own data display. The screen showed orbital scans of Earth's moon, focusing on the far side. Highlighted areas revealed massive geometric patterns buried beneath the surface. Precursor ruins, Thorne explained, hidden on your moon for perhaps hundreds of thousands of years. The chamber erupted in shocked conversations. Chairwoman Lynn banged her gavel repeatedly, calling for order. The assembly knew, James said when the noise finally settled. They knew Earth had precursor connections. That's why they restricted our development so severely. They feared what we might discover about ourselves. This changes nothing, Krell insisted, though his voice had lost its authority. The assembly still controls the gate network. One activated gate doesn't give Earth any real power. James smiled. Actually, it does. Alina, would you explain? Elena stepped forward. When our engine activated the gate, it didn't just open a connection to Earth. It sent a reactivation signal through the entire network. Dormant gates throughout the galaxy are coming online. Gates the assembly doesn't control. We've been monitoring transmissions from assembly ships, General Wallace added. They're in complete disarray trying to respond to simultaneous gate activations in a dozen different sectors. Krell's translator couldn't hide the alarm in his voice. You don't understand what you've done. The network was restricted for good reason. There are dangerous regions, quarantine zones, that you never warned us about, James cut in. You kept us ignorant while claiming to protect us. Chairwoman Lynn raised her hand again. What exactly are you proposing, Dr. Miller? James looked around the chamber, making eye contact with delegates from nations that had once been enemies, but now sat together as representatives of a united Earth. I propose that Earth lead a new coalition of worlds, those who have been kept in the dark by the assembly. With the Prometheus engine, we can help other species activate their local gates. We can build a truly cooperative network of civilizations instead of the controlled hierarchy the assembly created. The assembly will never allow this, Krell warned. They can't stop it, Reed said confidently. Their power was built on controlling access to the gates. That monopoly is broken. And their technological advantage, a delegate asked, was never real, Thorne answered. The assembly's advanced technology came from studying precursor artifacts. Without that exclusive access, They are no more advanced than many member worlds. Chairwoman Lin called for a vote. One by one, the nations of Earth registered their decisions. When the final tally appeared, it was nearly unanimous. Earth would challenge the Assembly's authority and reach out to other worlds who had been similarly restricted. Ambassador Krell, Lin said formally, please inform the Assembly of our decision. Earth withdraws from the technology restriction agreements, effective immediately. We will pursue our own path among the stars. Krell stood rigidly on the platform. This is a grave mistake. There will be consequences. There already have been consequences, James replied. For all the species whose development you've stunted, for all the worlds you've kept isolated. That ends today. As Krell departed, Thorne approached James. My people will stand with Earth, and we won't be alone. There are many within the Assembly who have questioned these policies for centuries. How many worlds do you think will join us? Elena asked. Enough to change the balance of power forever, Thorne replied. 1 month later, James stood on the observation deck of humanity's first official Stargate outpost. The massive ring floated in space before him, its center filled with the now familiar blue swirl of an active connection. Through the window, he could see a line of ships waiting for clearance, vessels from a dozen different worlds that had joined Earth's coalition. Each carried scientists and diplomats eager to share knowledge without assembly restrictions. Elena joined him at the window. The Andromedans arrived this morning. That makes 15 species in our alliance now. And more coming, James added. The Assembly is losing members weekly. They've stopped threatening sanctions, Reed commented as he entered the room. Apparently, they're too busy dealing with internal rebellions. James watched as another ship passed through the gate, emerging from thousands of light years away in an instant. Have you heard from Wallace? His expedition reached the precursor ruins on the moon yesterday, Elena reported. He says they've only scratched the surface, but what they found already is revolutionary. Speaking of revolutionary, Reed pointed to a different screen showing a news broadcast from Earth. The image showed the first fleet of human ships equipped with both Prometheus engines and Stargate interface technology. They were departing for a deep space exploration mission beyond the edge of known space. We did it, James said softly. We broke free. Elena smiled. And we launched it anyway. The Stargate pulsed with blue light as another ship arrived, bringing new allies from across the stars. The revolution had only just begun.